Welcome to the Bard 1 to 100 Leveling Skills Guide. I'll be going over all of your skills as you train to sing in the shower and not just the blood of your enemies better than the rest of them, but also hopefully kill your enemies along the way. Which is go from this to this. This is a beginner-focused series aimed to help those new to Final Fantasy XIV, the MMO genre, or still just need a little help. In that same vein, this will be focused on your actions and how to use them. We'll not be going deep into optimization, instead focused on the general play and giving general opening rotations. We will go through these together in order to help new players understand the process. If you wish to push your play further, there are further places you could research the job. The goal here is to drop players in on the ground level so they can make strides to improve themselves. Tooltips are broken up by expansion and that expansion's level cap. So level 50 for A Realm Reborn, 60 for Heavensward, 70 for Stormblood, 80 for Shadowbringers, 90 for Endwalker, and our final level cap of 100 in Dawntrail. I recommend all players add Sprint and Limit Break to their hotbars, both found in the General tab of the Actions menu. As for how my hotbars build, it'll make sense at 100. Just put your skills on your hotbars so that you are comfortable as you play. Everyone has their own way of doing things. If you want more info on the how and why I set up my UI, check the description for a video about it. Finally, keep in mind that this is an active MMO. Patches can and will change jobs. Check the description for a quick overview of each patch's changes or special notes. With all that out of the way, please support me in whatever way you can, check my links below, and let's begin. Bard is a flexible range DPS all about procs, an old term meaning one skill activating another, often at random. By nature of procs being random, Bard is a very reactive job. Your rotation boils down to special song abilities and the rotation of those across 2 minutes. Some procs change based on which song you are currently using and alter the playstyle of the job just a bit for the duration. Bard is also known for their support, with both small and high power buffs. Those songs give passive buffs to yourself and your party. You also have several dedicated support abilities with different effects. As a ranged job, you have high movement. Just don't go too far away, people prefer the music loud. To play an archer, you either start as one, or pick the class up in the Gridania Archers Guild after completion of your level 10 class quest as your first class. Let's get into the finer details of each skill. Level 1, Heavy Shot. This is a basic attack. It does 160 potency of damage to a target. As a ranged DPS, we can attack from far away. Most all attacks have a range of 25 yalms, and will from this point forward only be noted if it is not 25 yalms. But quickly we gain Level 2, Heavier Shot, and Straight Shot. Heavier Shot adds an extra effect onto Heavy Shot. That is a 20% chance to get a proc of Hawk's Eye for 30 seconds, which allows for a single use of the skill Straight Shot. Straight Shot does a 200 potency hit to a target. As a result, our goal is to hit enemies with Heavy Shot until we get a proc, then spend that proc for more damage. We cannot stack multiples of the same proc, so getting a second Hawk's Eye will merely overwrite the first. 20% is a low proc rate, but there's still a chance of it happening. Spend Straight Shot whenever you have it. Level 4, Raging Strikes. On a 2-minute cooldown, this increases all damage by 15% for 20 seconds. When we get into combat, we can throw this up to do more damage. Right now, we don't have much to use this for. Later on, the timing of this is going to be a lot more effective. For now, just use it on cooldown as you fight. Once you get some more stuff, aim to use Raging Strikes before you use it all. Level 6, Venomous Bite. This does a small hit of 100 potency to a target. However, this comes with a dot, or damage over time effect. This dot does 15 potency of damage for 45 seconds. Dots work on server ticks, which are 3 seconds, so divide that by the timer and we get 15 ticks of the dot. This is 225 potency, or 325 potency in total. It takes at least 12 seconds to be equal to 1 Heavy Shot, which is a decent length of time. Later levels, this is guaranteed. At this lower level, enemies might not live for even close to that. Get used to putting a dot up anyway. It's worth a large chunk of damage for every enemy you dot. When fighting stronger enemies later on, like bosses, put your dots back on the boss when the timer runs out. You'll only skip placing your dots back on if it's going to die before the dots have time to work. The long timer ensures you only have to refresh every now and then. At level 6 is also our first role action, Leg Graze. Ranged roll actions are hit or miss, even for soloing. Put them on your hotbars anyway, but I will not talk about them here. If you wish to hear more about the importance of these actions, the card in the corner or the description will take you to a roll actions guide. We also have Second Wind at level 8, then Foot Graze at level 10. Level 12, Bloodletter. This is our first skill with charges, which means it can stack multiple uses. The charge time is 15 seconds, and upon using a charge, the timer for the next charge begins. In total, it's a 30-second recharge time to get back to maximum charges. As an ability, the low 110 potency is just free damage rather than a loss over heavy shot. Weave it between your normal GCD presses every chance you get. This is only your first of many OGCD abilities. Level 15, Repelling Shot. This is a class quest skill, the first of many quest-based skills. If you are not doing a quest for gear, do them for your skills. Going forward, I will not verbally mention it, but in the top left is a denotion of every time this crops up. Always do your class and job quests. As for Repelling Shot itself, it's not much of a shot. It has a 30-second cooldown and 15 yalm range, slightly smaller than your normal range. It does no damage and causes you to leap back 10 yalms away from the enemy. This has little use overall. If a boss is about to do an AoE around itself, and you are inside it, you can hit Repelling Shot to get out of it. Or you could just walk away from the boss. Repelling Shot is a matter of speed. You will launch back pretty quickly. If you are slow to react, a quick Repelling Shot can save you. Or if placed poorly, launch you off the edge of an arena. Level 18, Quick Nock. This is our first AoE, or Area of Effect skill. It attacks in a cone in front of you, hitting all enemies within the cone with 110 potency of damage. The cone has a range of 12 yalms, making it fairly large. But also consider, the cone originates from you. This makes it more like a melee skill. You want to hit the most enemies you can, and being closer to a group of enemies means you're more likely to hit the furthest enemies in the group. The cone is very wide, further making proximity a good thing. Hit both far and wide, rather than just the ones at the closer edge of the group. When up against 2 or more enemies, Quick Nock spam, but also consider dots in AoE. When a tank is pulling multiple groups, it's hard to aim AoE and hit multiple enemies properly. You can place dots on enemies instead. Then once the tank stops running, unleash your AoE spam. Early on this won't mean much, but later on it will be more important. Level 20, Increased Action Damage. This really isn't anything special. All damage is up by 10%. Everything is balanced around this increase. It doesn't change how you play at all. Level 20 also gives us a roll action, Peloton. How's the New Year's resolution coming along? Head Graze is at level 24 too. Level 25, Enhanced Quick Nock and Wide Volley. Enhanced Quick Nock gives it a 20% chance to now proc Hawk's Eye. This is the same buff that Heavy Shot can give you. This is so you can use Hawk's Eye for single target or AoE interchangeably. This is because Wide Volley is our AoE version of Straight Shot. It can only be used with a proc of Hawk's Eye. Wide Volley hits a target and all enemies within 5 yalms of that target with 140 potency. On 2 or more enemies, this is stronger than Straight Shot. The range is small, but very deadly if you aim it right. This is also a reason why you should have been in melee range for AoE. You need to target the middle enemies in a group, not the back edge. Same rules apply though. Spend your proc every time you get one. This also mentions a Barrage potency. We'll talk about this later. Level 30, Windbite. This is your second dot. Much like Venomous Bite, it lasts 45 seconds. The damage is 60 potency on hit and 20 potency every tick of the dot. That makes it a 300 potency dot and 360 potency total. That means if you get the full duration of the dot, this is stronger than Venomous Bite. But most enemies who live long enough for one dot, live long enough for you to put both dots on them. Prioritize Windbite on long-living enemies, and Venomous Bite for short-lived enemies. To obtain the Bard job, you must first reach level 30 and complete the level 30 Archer quest. Additionally, complete the main scenario quest, Self-Management, which is at level 20 in the story. Return to the guild, and the quest should be there for you. Level 30, Mage's Ballad. This is our first song ability, giving us a brand new song gauge. It can only be used when inside of combat. At least one enemy with some aggro. You do not need a target to use your song though, which is important when it comes to trials and raids where bosses can leave the arena. This will buff everyone in the party for 45 seconds. The range is 50 yalms, which for all intents and purposes is just party-wide no matter what, except in maybe Alliance raid bosses. Everyone affected will have their damage increased by 1%. Very tiny, but remember that it's 45 seconds. This has an extra effect for us. Repertoire. Songs work like dots in that they tick every 3 seconds. In this case, there is an 80% chance every 3 seconds to trigger the repertoire proc, and all 3 of our songs do this. Mage's Ballad specifically has the repertoire effect of reducing the cooldown of Bloodletter by 7.5 seconds, which is half of the charge time. As a result, while we are in Mage's Ballad, we'll be passively gaining extra charges of Bloodletter, at most 7.5 charges, but on average 6 extra charges. Absolutely be sure to be spending Bloodletter during your time in Mage's Ballad, lest you overcap and lose out on some damage. Our final role action is already in, it's Arm's Length at level 32. Level 35, the Warden's Paeon. This is our first dedicated support ability. On a 45-second cooldown, you can remove a single negative status effect from yourself or an ally. If no negative effects are present, you give the player a buff for 30 seconds that will automatically remove the first effect it can. Summarily, this is Bard's version of the healer action, Esuna. Because Esuna has no cooldown, usually healers take care of these, but given you can weave this between GCDs for no loss, making use of it is just helpful. If you stand in a poison puddle and get poisoned, press Paeon just to remove your own poison. Cleansable debuffs have a white line on them like so. If this white line is there, throw out a Paeon on whoever has one of these. If there is no white line, ignore it. You can't do anything about those. It's some other kind of mechanic or debuff that you need to just let time out. Most duties have no required debuffs to Esuna, so most of the time someone needs to mess up for you to need Paeon. Level 38, Barrage. On a 120-second cooldown, Barrage has a few effects. The buff lasts for 10 seconds. To start, it acts like Hawk's Eye, allowing you to use Straight Shot or Wide Volley. But this also stacks with Hawk's Eye being a unique buff. When using Straight Shot, it will go off 3 times. This essentially makes it a 600 potency hit. For Wide Volley, it is increased in damage to 220 potency instead of hitting 3 times. It's about a 50% buff in damage. With something like this, you'll want to use it while Raging Strikes is running. Add 15% on the big benefits of Barrage, and it ends up being a really big hit. And there's no way to lose the buff except for timing out. You can hit Barrage, hit Heavy Shot, and then hit Straight Shot for no downsides. Simply hit Barrage and then one of the 2 Hawk's Eye skills when applicable. Level 40, Increased Action Damage 2. Just like the first one, your damage is up by 20%. This doesn't affect the playstyle of the job at all. Level 40, Army's Paeon. Our second song in the line. All songs have the same basic effects. The differences are the buff and repertoire. The buff Armies gives is direct hit rate up by 3%. This repertoire effect is reduced recast time and auto attack delay. You can have up to 4 stacks, each stack granting 4% speed, totaling to 16%. While Mage's Ballad has a wide curve up or down of how many Bloodletters you get, you're almost guaranteed to get all 4 stacks in armies. 80% is still 80%, so theoretically you could end up getting no stacks, but the odds are infinitely small. For the duration of Army's Paeon, expect to be hitting Heavy Shot and your dots a bit faster. The order we want to use our songs is Mage's Ballad and then Army's Paeon. Use Armies the moment Mage's runs out. This order is the same regardless of single target or AoE. Once both have been used, you have 30 seconds of no song. In dungeons, this usually gets filled with some of the walk time between groups of enemies. Level 45, Reign of Death. This is the AoE version of Bloodletter. It even shares charges with Bloodletter. If you use a Bloodletter, you lose a Reign of Death, and vice versa. Reign of Death has an 8 yalm radius, doing 100 potency of damage to a target and all enemies within the radius. This is only 30 potency lower than Bloodletter, making it stronger on as few as 2 enemies. Bloodletter you use for single target. That extra potency adds up fast in boss fights, but the moment there are 2 or more enemies, use Reign of Death. Because tanks like to grab multiple groups of enemies, Any and all trash mob fights will have a ton of enemies. This makes Mage's Ballad extremely strong for AoE. The summary is just use Rain of Death as often as you can in AoE. Level 50, Battle Voice. Another 2-minute cooldown. This increases the direct hit rate of all players within 30 yalms of you by 20%. This lasts for 20 seconds. Similarly to Raging Strikes, you want to use this before going crazy with big attacks. The more things you buff, the better it is, and you'll be ideally timing it along with your party members. They'll also be throwing out any and all of their party buffs every 2 minutes. Simply put, use this on cooldown when in combat. Now let's get into openers. They're how you naturally open a fight and set the pace for the whole fight. This is especially true in trials and raids. Openers are made to do the most damage you can. At level 50 we are missing a core tool or two, but we already have most of our skills needed to make a proper opener. This likely isn't optimal as a result, but let's start building your muscle memory now. Windbite, Mage's Ballad, Venomous Bite, Battle Voice, Heavy Shot, Raging Strikes, Heavy Shot, Bloodletter, Heavy Shot, Barrage, Straight Shot, Heavy Shot, Heavy Shot, Heavy Shot, Heavy Shot, Bloodletter, Heavy Shot. Before talking about the granular details of the opener, I want to talk about Bloodletter and Heavy Shot in this. Remember that Mage's Ballad is constantly giving us extra time off of the cooldown of Bloodletter. We only have 2 in here because they are guaranteed uses. Anywhere you can fit them in, use the extra Bloodletters you can get. Similar is the procs from Heavy Shot. Every Heavy Shot can give Hawk's Eye. This means you can replace any and all Heavy Shots with a Straight Shot if you get one. Always use Straight Shots you get, it's just higher damage. We start with putting up our dots for reasons that will become clear at level 60. We then immediately weave in Mage's Ballad to get our songs going. You may end up having a small issue with the game recognizing you are in combat already if your ping is bad, but we'll keep going along with this as the loss is pretty minor. Otherwise, the long timer of the song is a boon for buffing our party. From there, we use Battle Voice and Raging Strikes in the back half of their respective GCD uses. After the second Heavy Shot, we will use our first Bloodletter. You can use one after Venomous if you're worried about the Mage's procs, but muscle memory for later is being built here. This also is about where all party buffs are active, so putting it here buffs the Bloodletter as much as possible. After the third Heavy Shot is Barrage, which will allow us to use Straight Shot. This third Heavy Shot is getting replaced at level 100, so it's essentially filler for muscle memory too. Use that Barrage proc, and then go back to Heavy Shot procs. The second Bloodletter at the end is the last moment you can use Bloodletter before party buffs start dropping off. Again, these can be used earlier as you get them. We have a lot of open weaving slots, and there's no need to wait to use them otherwise. Procs are random even if consistent, so there's no simple way to account for it visually. This is the big flex point of Bard, and one you need to get used to now. No matter how much muscle memory I am attempting to instill, every time you do your opener will be different from last time. Focus on learning how to use your procs as you get them, while things are simple and potentially even boring. Let's also talk about AoE openers. That's a big misnomer though, as AoE isn't so simple. A general opener accounts for most boss fights, while AoE is a lot more flexible. Some AoE skills are better on even just 2 enemies, others need more. Then you need to factor in that the player base tends to encourage wall-to-wall pulling. This leads to large groups of enemies, but only after a long travel time. While running with the tank, be careful not to steal aggro. Put dots up on as many enemies as you can, or quick knock if you can hit a few enemies. Once you get to the end of the pool and the tank stops running, that's when we unleash our opener. A little before the end of the pool, put up your song. Due to the long duration, a few seconds lost is not a huge deal. Later on, it's even potentially beneficial to your burst phase. When it comes to AoE openers, we also tend to front load even more. We spam quick knock and put up all of our buffs as quickly as we can. Throw out Rain of Death as you get them, and just keep spamming quick knock until only one enemy remains. Use Wide Volley if you get procs for it. From there you would have to use armies when Mages runs out, and continue to ignore your dots. As strong as they can be, they are slow to work and not worth using once you're at the end of a run. That covers both aspects of Bard. We're going to see a lot more get added that makes the rotation far more clever than it looks. This is mostly thanks to Heavensward's toolkit. The job just feels wrong without it, and you're gonna see why very quickly. Level 52, the Wanderer's Minuet and Pitch Perfect. Before going into this skill, let's talk the action change settings options. This is our first example of it, and Bard has 3 of them. This allows you to spread or combine actions as you wish. The Wanderer's Minuet can turn into Pitch Perfect if you want it to. I will, however, be keeping them as separate buttons. Use whichever settings you wish. Our third and final song comes with an extra skill. The buff it gives is 2% crit rate to everyone. Repertoire can be stacked up to 3 times, but you need only 1 to be able to use Pitch Perfect. This is a powerful ability you can weave between GCDs. With 1 stack of Repertoire, Pitch Perfect does 100 potency of damage to a target. With 2 stacks, 220 potency. And at 3 stacks, you get 360 potency of damage. So stack 1 is 100 potency, stack 2 is worth 120 potency, and the third stack is worth 140 potency. This alone makes Wanderers our strongest song. It gets better because Dawntrail has upped this to be an AoE attack. It is half the power to all enemies within 5 yalms of the initial target, so the size of wide volley. This makes it a 50 potency, 110 potency, and 180 potency AoE hit for the respective stacks. This makes Wanderers the best song for AoE too. When using Pitch Perfect, aim to wait for 3 stacks of Repertoire. The only exception is if Wanderers is about to wear off, or you're otherwise not going to be able to get 3 stacks. If you have 3 seconds left of Wanderer's Minuet, throw out whatever Pitch Perfect you can and immediately move into Mage's Ballad. Some damage is better than losing the stacks you had. Now we have our final song order. We are going to use the same song order almost no matter what. 45 seconds of Wanderers, 45 seconds of Mages, and 30 seconds of Armies. This makes for 120 seconds, exactly 2 minutes. Remember that our powerful abilities are also on 2-minute cooldowns, giving us an obvious loop point. Technically though, it's more like 43 seconds, 43 seconds, and then 34 seconds. This maximizes the number of procs in Wanderers and Mages, while giving us a little bit of extra time in Armies. Armies is last for other reasons later down the road too, but for now just keep it last as the weakest option. When Wanderers comes off of cooldown in the middle of it, immediately hit the button. Feel free to practice this on dummies. Slightly cut off the first 2 songs, then mash that Wanderers button in the middle of Armies as it becomes available. Again, this will be the order we use our songs, and for as long as we will use them in every case, with little to no exception. Level 54, Empyreal Arrow. On a 15-second cooldown, this does 240 potency of damage to a target. Right now, it's just a stronger Bloodletter on a short cooldown. Later on though, this is going to be the crux of our rotation. Level 56, Iron Jaws. This is a weapon skill doing a paltry 100 potency to a target. The strength of this is if you hit an enemy with dots on it, those dots will be replaced completely. So now instead of needing to Windbite and Venomous Bite to refresh your dot, just hit Iron Jaws to send both timers back to max. Be careful you don't let your dots fall off. It will only refresh the timers, not place the dots themselves. We should also talk about snapshotting. If you have a buff running when you put a dot up, say Raging Strikes, the entire dot gets the boosted damage. Even if Raging Strikes falls off, the remaining timer is buffed. If you put Venomous Bite up when Raging Strikes has 1 second left, the full timer still gets boosted by Raging Strikes. As a result, we're going to be using and abusing this in the openers going forward. Let me also clarify that the refresh of Iron Jaws also refreshes any snapshots. If the dot is boosted by Raging Strikes, but then you Iron Jaws after Raging Strikes falls off, the refreshed dots will not be boosted anymore. It's a complete replacement of the old dot. Level 60, Sidewinder. On a 60-second cooldown, this does 320 potency to a single target. That's it, no further benefits later on. Use this on cooldown every minute. This is a leftover from previous iterations of Bard, now left with no actual purpose beyond damage. We got a lot of new stuff in this expansion, and all of it goes into our opener. So let's check that out and see how the job makes more sense. The first change is changing to Wanderer's Minuet as the strongest song. This makes the late use of Bloodletter less of a worry. We're also going to immediately weave in Empyreal Arrow due to the extremely short cooldown. The later benefits are also taken into account here. Our second change isn't until our straight shot, we will be using Sidewinder. This is the first open weaving slot we have that we aren't saving for reasons such as Pitch Perfect. Bard is a job that is going to avoid planned double weaves almost entirely. You can always weave 2 abilities between each GCD. But what if, say, after this heavy shot, you hit 3 stacks of Pitch Perfect? If we used Bloodletter and Sidewinder here, you might get a 4th stack, which would be wasted. So imagine every single empty slot, every opportunity to weave that isn't being used, those are for Pitch Perfect if you get 3 stacks. Using our second Bloodletter early is possible, but only if it wouldn't delay a 3-stack Pitch Perfect. We have no way to guarantee when we get 3 stacks. We just have to plan ahead of the randomness. Luckily, we don't have overly too many guaranteed weaves, so there's no real downside. This Pitch Perfect at the end is also due to the randomness. This is the last possible moment you can Pitch Perfect before Raging Strikes and most other party buffs will fall off. So no matter how many stacks, you can Raging Strikes to get it boosted a bit extra. Waiting longer for 3 stacks would end up actually being a damage loss. The big change is our inclusion of Iron Jaws. Remember what I said about snapshotting? Using Iron Jaws here right before all buffs fall off will snapshot the dot timers. This maximizes how long they last under buffs. Putting them up at the beginning is more acting as filler GCDs. We don't want to immediately throw up all buffs on pull because other jobs have to build up to their big burst phase. So use that time to put both up and save a GCD under buffs by simply refreshing with Iron Jaws. Similar is our changes to AoE. Mage's Ballad gets replaced with the superior Wanderers. Empyreal Arrow and Sidewinder right now are just paltry damage against what will end up being large groups of enemies, but it remains free damage. Then Pitch Perfect at the end here is again because of not knowing when we'll get 3 stacks. Use Pitch Perfect anytime you can. Welcome to what Bard is supposed to feel like. It's not going to change much up to level 100 from here. That isn't to say we get nothing, but most of it isn't going to change our core. We'll see this in Stormblood. Level 62, Troubadour. With a 120 second cooldown and 30 yalm radius, this reduces damage taken by yourself and all nearby allies by 10% for 15 seconds. This is much less situational than Warden's Paeon. Anytime there is damage happening, this is a good skill to pop. Raid-wide damage is common from even basic dungeon bosses now. Is the boss about to do damage to everyone? Troubadour to reduce how much you all take. If the boss is going to do multiple hits, protect the party. A less known, but extremely useful approach is to instead help just the tank. You've seen wall-to-wall pulls by now almost for sure. Large groups of enemies will be doing big damage to the tank. Reducing the damage from 8 enemies at once is extremely good. The tank should be using their cooldowns, but what's one more to help them out? And if you're familiar with tanking, you can place Troubadour where you know enemies are going to be more dangerous. The further we get, the more damage things are going to do, the more helpful this skill gets. Don't be afraid to use this on something that does low damage. You at least used it. With experience, you'll learn to recognize what needs mitigation more than anything else. Level 64, Bite Mastery, Caustic Bite, and Stormbite. Stormbite and Caustic Bite are much more powerful versions of your dots. The timers are the same, but the potency is way up. Stormbite is a 100 potency hit with a total dot potency of 375. Caustic Bite is 150 potency on hit with a dot worth a total 300 potency. Simply just far stronger and more important to keep running. Level 66, Nature's Minne. Another dedicated support skill. Nature's Minne has a 120 second cooldown. With the same range and duration as Troubadour, this increases HP recovery from healing actions by 15%. You can use this the exact same ways as Troubadour, but with a slightly different outcome. The healer still has to heal the damage that comes out, but you can make it that they don't have to heal quite as hard. If they would heal the group to just under max HP, Minne would ensure everyone gets their HP topped off. This genuinely makes a big difference in harder hitting fights. It increases how powerful shields are, helps keep people alive when a lot of damage goes out back to back, and so on. It's a skill that shines much more in harder content. It's hard to really see the effect in most casual content, but there definitely is some help. Level 68, Enhanced Empyreal Arrow. Enhanced Empyreal Arrow has turned it into a proc machine. Every time you use it, Repertoire will activate. This happens during all of your songs, immediately giving you the related effect with 100% accuracy. This means a pitch perfect stack, cooldown reduction on Bloodletter, or Army's speed boost. Something you need to worry about now is overcapping pitch perfect. You can only hold 3 stacks still. If you're about to use Empyreal Arrow and you're already at 2 stacks, you may just want to fire pitch perfect early. Sure, you lose the extra potency of stacking 3, but it's a bigger loss if, say, at the same time as Empyreal Arrow, your song procs a second stack, overcapping you to 4. That's a far bigger loss. So basically, always use Empyreal Arrow if you have up to 1 repertoire stack. If at 2 or 3, weave in pitch perfect first, and then Empyreal as the second weave. During Mage's Ballad, it's much harder to overcap, but do keep an eye on it there too. Level 70, Straight Shot Mastery and Refulgent Arrow. Straight Shot is seeing a major upgrade into the much cooler Refulgent Arrow. It does 260 potency of damage. That's all this does though. Cool animation, but the same skill. Well, that is the end of the Stormblood toolkit. Our opener has seen no obvious changes. I do want to bring up the level 60 opener again though. Remember our uses of Empyreal Arrow. These 2 uses are 2 guaranteed stacks of pitch perfect. This further emphasizes why we only single weave even after raging strikes. Each slot could be pitch perfect as the need arises. The only change for openers is a sneaky thing I'm going to do here with AoE. I'm adding Troubadour in at the start and end. This is because I really want to emphasize how useful it is to Troubadour in trash packs. When the tank stops, you can pop it to protect them for a while. Otherwise, after you finish your burst, make sure to Troubadour if the pull isn't close to ending. The same can be done with Nature's Minne. Some dungeons have trash packs that last a really long time, and need 2 sets of cooldowns at least to get through. A late Troubadour adds into this second round as you finish cleaning them up. This is like pitch perfect in that there is no hard and fast rule. Use it when it seems needed. Let's get moving into Shadowbringers. We're still not going to change openers much, but there's something a bit more interesting coming up. Level 72, Wide Volley Mastery and Shadowbite. Wide Volley is being upgraded to Shadowbite. Like with Refulgent Arrow, this is just an animation and potency boost. It deals 170 potency of damage now. That's all. Level 76, Bite Mastery 2. Stormbite, Caustic Bite, and Iron Jaws have been given a 35% chance to grant Hawk's Eye. Before this point, they had no chance at all. This is not only better than the chance Heavy Shot has, but means you can now proc Hawk's Eye anytime you need to manage your dots. This includes in your opener. Your first Heavy Shot might now just be Refulgent Arrow. Well, I say that, but there's a reason the chance to proc is higher. Level 76, Heavy Shot Mastery and Burst Shot. Heavy Shot is now Burst Shot, doing 200 potency to a target and having an improved 35% chance to proc Hawk's Eye. Enjoy getting a lot more Refulgent Arrows. Level 76, Enhanced Army's Paeon. This is a big trait, and you should be happy it wasn't added to the Army's Paeon tooltip. When using any other song when under Army's Paeon, you will gain Army's Muse for 10 seconds. If Army's Paeon runs out on its own, you will have Army's Ethos for 30 seconds. Singing another song within those 30 seconds will grant you Army's Muse. The Ethos effect is so if you're in a boss and it becomes invulnerable or leaves the arena entirely, you can still get the Army's Muse buff when it comes back. Between trash packs is also an option. Army's Muse scales in power, giving you a stronger speed boost depending on how many stacks of repertoire you had when Army's Paeon finished. 1 stack is 1%, 2 stacks is 2%, 3 stacks is 4%, and all 4 stacks is the much higher 12% buff. Essentially, you're carrying the effects of Army's Paeon into your next song. This is why we have our song ordered the way it is. The Wanderer's Minuet is when we use all of our buffs. We want to buff that section as much as we can. The only issue is it's such a short duration for Army's Muse. Level 80, Soul Voice and Apex Arrow. We now have the Soul gauge added under our Song gauge. Repertoire now has a secondary effect, granting us 5 Soul gauge every time. With the 3-second proc time, that's potentially 5 Soul gauge every 3 seconds. This includes Empyreal Arrow uses. The only use of this gauge is for Apex Arrow. Apex has a scaling potency based on how much gauge you have. To break it down, consider every 5 gauge to be 25 potency, linearly scaling. So 100 potency at the minimum cost of 20 gauge, to 500 potency for 100 gauge. Using Apex will spend the full gauge regardless of how high it is. Apex is a 25 yalm straight line toward your target, so a different shape to Quick Knock, Rain of Death, and Shadowbite. Generally, we want to only use this when the gauge is at 80 or higher. There are some flex points with it in AoE, and especially if the boss is about to die early. Wherever you can manage, Apex Arrow at 80 gauge or higher only. Factoring in how fast the gauge fills, this should work out to essentially having a 1 minute cooldown. Once again, our opener does not change. Our skills are stronger, they have higher chances to give us Hawk's Eye, and burst phases every 2 minutes into a fight are buffed by Army's Muse. The big thing though is Apex Arrow at those 2 minute marks. We cannot use it in the opener because it'll be weak and nowhere near the 80 gauge mark. When you loop around back to Wanderer's Minuet 2 minutes into a fight, you should be entering it around 80 gauge. After putting up your buffs, you'll be able to Apex Arrow for its big hit. Replacing any of your burst shots with Apex Arrow is a huge boost. Endwalker continues this pattern, but we're actually going to change our opener for once. It's not a big change though. Level 82, Quick Knock Mastery and Ladonsbite. Quick Knock has been upgraded to Ladonsbite. It now does 130 potency of damage and has been given the 35% chance of getting Hawk's Eye. Level 84, Enhanced Bloodletter. This allows us to stack 3 charges of Bloodletter and Rain of Death. This is extremely useful for making sure we don't overcap during Mage's Ballad. This allows us to safely store charges when going from armies back into Wanderers. Instead of spending all Bloodletters during armies, let the charges build up. If you don't hit 3, you can save them for your burst phase every 2 minutes. Level 86, Enhanced Apex Arrow and Blast Arrow. This is why we want to only use Apex Arrow on 80 or higher gauge. The gauge now has this little notch at the 80 mark. If using Apex when the soul gauge is 80 or higher, it becomes a self-contained combo. You are given a second Apex Arrow in Blast Arrow. This doesn't have the same scaling potency, always doing 600 potency at base. In terms of AoE, it does 60% less to all enemies after the first. That's only 240 potency to the maximum of 500 from Apex Arrow. Absolutely always aim to get Blast Arrow. It's GCD efficient and almost always a gain to use, with the same few exceptions. If it's the final boss, it's about to die, and you only have 70 gauge or so, might as well make use of it. Anything below 50 gauge is almost guaranteed to be a damage loss. Level 88, Enhanced Troubadour. Troubadour has been reduced to a 90-second cooldown. This means more potential uses and more protecting your party from big attacks. This is especially useful in the harder content types, where bigger hits are even more common. Otherwise, just generally nice to have. Level 90, Minstrel's Coda and Radiant Finale. This is our final party buff, adding another feature to the song gauge. These icons each represent our songs. Each song grants us one of these coda. Each coda strengthens our final skill, Radiant Finale. It has a 110-second cooldown, this is for making it smoother to use, don't get tricked by the lower cooldown, and grants yourself and everyone within 30 yalms a damage buff for 20 seconds. The strength of this is determined by how many coda we have, each one being worth 2%. However, because of it essentially having the same 2-minute timer as our other major buffs, we'll always get the 6% buff. This only becomes a question for trash pulls or someone needing to go AFK. Too much downtime and you end up getting into Wanderers without 3 coda, which will always use Radiant Finale in Wanderers with the rest of our buffs. Moving into our next opener, we can fit in Radiant Finale. Other than that, there's no other changes. We're going to slot it in with Raging Strikes. While we open the fight with only 1 coda, this actually lines us up for every other 2-minute window to be all 3 coda with no overlap. 2-minute burst phases are most of our damage anyway, so no reason not to. The rest is all the same, which includes not having the third Bloodletter in here. Again, we don't know where we will pitch perfect. Simply use Bloodletter where you can without delaying using a 3-stack pitch perfect. For AoE, we're simply shifting our OGCD usage back 1. We want Radiant Finale up before we start spamming our OGCDs. Remember that Empyrean is here for the sole purpose of getting pitch perfect stacks. Free damage is free, but a pitch perfect is way more. We finally made it to Dawntrail. This is going to be the biggest change to our opener in quite a long time. When it comes to our overall rotation though, nothing at all. Level 92, Bloodletter Mastery and Heartbreak Shot. This is another of those straight upgrades. Bloodletter is now Heartbreak Shot. It is now 180 potency, a significant power boost. However, it is still weaker than Rain of Death on just 2 targets. Level 94, Ranged Mastery. Hey look, more power boosts! These are almost all single target boosts except for Apex Arrow. There are no changes to how we play though. Level 96, Enhanced Barrage and Resonant Arrow. Using Barrage now is part of action change settings. Barrage will give Resonant Arrow ready for 30 seconds. Naturally, this allows you to use Resonant Arrow. This is a 600 potency hit to the target, and 300 potency to all enemies within 5 yalms of that target. Another circle AoE. Despite being given by Barrage, Barrage will not be spent by Resonant Arrow. There's really no rules to this, just use it anytime you have it. Level 98, Enhanced Troubadour II. Troubadour is slightly buffed to be a 15% damage reduction. Every use of it is now just slightly more effective. Level 100, Enhanced Radiant Finale and Radiant Encore. Our final case of action change settings is Radiant Finale giving Radiant Encore ready for 30 seconds. Radiant Encore is a scaling potency orbital laser beam based on how many coda we have. 1 coda is 500 potency, 2 is 600 potency, and all 3 coda is 900 potency. For AoE, all enemies within 5 yalms of the original target will take half the listed potency. Like with Resonant Arrow, if you're using Radiant Finale, you're using Radiant Encore with no exceptions. Just remember to aim these like Shadowbite, a small target in the middle of the trash packs. Welcome to the end. You probably didn't expect an orbital laser strike attack, but here we are. Let's do a full review as we go through the additions to our level 100 opener. For those not needing the overview, just replace some of the burst shots with your new skills. We open with putting our dots up. We don't want to immediately pop all of our buffs because other jobs will have a prep phase. Make our dots part of ours, while weaving in Wanderer's Minuet and Empyreal Arrow. This immediately starts gaining us gauge and repertoire procs. As soon as the buffs go up, we'll have some extra stacks. We'll start buffing after Caustic since we have 3 different buffs to apply, and Battle Voice is not a guaranteed bonus. We'll start using Burst Shot to give us weaving windows, but every Burst Shot might instead be Refulgent Arrow. It all depends on if we get a Hawk's Eye proc. We'll only be doing single weaves from this point forward because any one of these might be paired with Pitch Perfect. If you hit 3 stacks, you want to immediately send it out. If you don't, feel free to Heartbreak Shot in the weave windows if it isn't already a part of it. Which, Heartbreak Shot here is important for getting the cooldown rolling. From here we're getting all of our big hits. Radiant Encore is one of our strongest hits, especially when we have 3 coda later on in the fight. Barrage will give us 2 more big attacks in Refulgent Arrow and Resonant Arrow. Sidewinder is our last cooldown we've not yet used, so we'll use it after Refulgent. After Resonant, Empyreal will come off of cooldown in the back half of the GCD. If you're at 3 Pitch Perfect stacks, throw them out here and immediately get 1 back. We'll use 2 more burst shots before Iron Jaws. This maximizes how much of the initial dot placement we get, while snapshotting at the last moment a new set of dots with all buffs rolling. These will be super dots for the next 45 seconds, even as all the buffs fall off. This also helps for alignment and timing later on. This Heartbreak Shot here, you might not even have. You ideally could have used it early. It is here purely for the fact that this is the last place you can use it before buffs start falling off. Same for the Pitch Perfect here. It will miss the bonus from Battle Voice, but get everything else. From here we just have Upkeep. Use the next song when the previous one is falling off. Remember that we do 43 seconds of Wanderers and Mages, with 34 seconds of Armies before we loop back to Wanderers. Make sure you use Iron Jaws before your dots fall off, and should not need to reapply both dots mid-fight if there's no downtime. Keep spending Empyreal Arrow, Heartbreak Shot, and Sidewinder as the cooldowns tick off, especially Heartbreak during Mages. Also don't forget to spend Soul Gauge after the 80 mark. This is essentially a 60-second cooldown too, even at 100 gauge. Every 2 minutes you'll be back to Wanderers and get to do your burst again, but with an added in Apex Arrow and Blast Arrow. This will replace 2 of your burst shots once all buffs are going. Now let's do the karaoke opener. This is where I will say the names of the skills as they get used. This will better show off the pace of the opener and how much goes into it. Just keep in mind, the procs are not visually shown, so a Burst Shot might actually be a Refulgent Arrow or such. I will be vocally saying all the skills I use to even further this point. Stormbite, the Wander's Minuet, Empyreal Arrow, Caustic Bite, but a voice. Burst Shot, Radiant Finale, Raging Strikes, Burst Shot, Heartbreak Shot. Radiant Encore, Barrage. Refulgent Arrow, Sidewinder. Resonant Arrow, Pitch Perfect. Empyreal Arrow, Burst Shot, Heartbreak Shot, Burst Shot. Iron Jaws, Heartbreak Shot, Burst Shot, Pitch Perfect. As for an AoE opener, both new skills are also AoE. We're going to Ladonsbite for setting up buffs, then afterward, once all the big explosive hits are done, it ends up fitting into 3 phases in a way: setup, full burst, and the cooldown proc management section. The actual adding them in isn't too important as much as making sure you're aiming everything right. Ladonsbite is a wide cone, while we also have a line and circle based AoEs. Simply replace some of the Ladonsbite uses with Radiant Encore and Resonant Arrow. Radiant Encore is first, simply due to needing to use Barrage to get Shadowbite and Resonant Arrow. And that's Bard. If nothing else, this is a very unique job. Even the other job with random procs doesn't feel even close to how Bard is. It's an acquired taste, but a good one in its own way. A lot of support in both offensive and defensive ways. Good luck with its unique learning curve. Thank you for watching this Bard 1 to 100 leveling skills guide. Feel free to give feedback or ask questions on what might still be confusing to you. I'm always seeking to improve, as should you. Don't stop with this guide, even if I succeeded in helping you improve. Please leave a rating, comment, sub, those really do help creators. You can also come watch me on Twitch or even go follow my Patreon. The links in the description will take you where you need to. Have fun in your adventures across Tyrol, and may the power of Anne and Nidhogg stay waste to your enemies.